All right. Well, hello, listeners. Welcome back to the latest episode of Woman, Man, and Other Man Talk About Film, TV, and Other Entertainment. AKA, welcome back to the feature-length podcast. On this show, we discuss productions of various genres and media, typically for a time long enough to rival a feature-length film. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. And if you're a newcomer, welcome aboard. Glad to have you, buddy. The feature-length podcast is hosted by myself and my co-hosts. I'm Daniel.
I'm Marco, aka Other Guy.
And I'm Carolina, aka Woman.
On this episode of the FLP, which, fun fact, FLP stands for feature-length podcast. So, just pointing that out. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Mother, which is Darren Aronofsky's 2017 film production thing, whatever you want to call it. Marco had never seen this movie before this week, and Carol and I had each seen it once before. We each rewatched it for the episode. It's kind of a genre-defying work about nameless characters taking place in a metaphorical story and world. On the surface level, it follows a quote-unquote character played by Jennifer Lawrence, who is peeved by unwanted guests in her home, while her husband, played by Javier Bardem, keeps insisting that they are welcome. Things go off the rails, and the guests take a toll on homeowners and their home. Now, above that very, very thin literal plane of this plot is the metaphorical level, which basically makes up the entire intended story by Darren Aronofsky. As he has insisted in multiple interviews, by the way. Jennifer Lawrence plays a human representation of Mother Earth. Javier Bardem is God, and the unwanted guests are the human race invading the home, which is our planet. The movie basically becomes a retelling of the Bible, but adapted with modern aspects, and as we'll go on to discuss, I'm sure, that storytelling decision was quite questionable. Okay.
I like how every time you reference story or characters, I could just hear the air quotes around it.
But good intro. We normally just try to make it up as we go, and we always forget to say our names or the podcast name or something.
Yeah, it's not a problem this time.
We thought it through this time, guys. We're learning. Episode 3.
That being said, the entire rest of this episode is probably going to be true to form, where we're just like
a drunken disaster.
Yeah, but
we're
literally
not
this time,
normally
because
drunken disasters.
No, just this time. Okay. Who would like to share their thoughts first, or do you guys want me to go first?
I think you should go first.
I'd love if you went first, honestly, because again, okay. Marco had not seen this before this week, so.
And you sent us some very fun messages while you were watching. Normally, we try not to give each other any spoilers for the one person who hasn't seen it, but Marco just couldn't help himself.
Yeah.
So please go ahead.
It was the only way I made it through the movie, was to be able to message you guys and be like, I am watching this movie, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's get something out of the way here. At the end of the last episode, I made it sound like I was going to have a lot of fun just ripping on this movie. This isn't going to be me ripping on the movie as much as it is me trying to do like an autopsy on the movie, because it's really unfortunate. This movie, like, that's the best way I can put it, is that it's unfortunate, because I feel like... Yeah, like...
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't have a problem with the, like, inception, like, premise, like, initial premise of the movie. But where they chose to take it and how they chose to execute it completely fuck with something that could have been really interesting, and it just becomes a mess. So, okay, let me start there. So, as Dan alluded to, Jennifer Lawrence plays, like, Mother Earth, basically. The house is kind of like Earth, and Javier Bardem basically plays God. And I guess, like, the central idea of the movie is the idea of, like, really what it boils down to is, like, in the literal story, she's happy with just like Javier Bardem, but then as the story goes on, like more people come and there's Bible stories and shit in there. But really what it's about is like, is existence, like, is humanity like special to existence? Or is like the point of existence like just to be like, would it be enough that if just the earth exists without humans, and like, are humans a problem on the earth? Like, that's kind of the theme of the movie, which is interesting. But what really bothers me, and like, as we get later on into it, like, I actually have like suggestions on how they could have done it in a more interesting way. But what bothers me is like a couple of things I want to start off. First of all, the first thing that really bothers me is that this is like the classic case of something being substanceless and trying to seem really like deep. So when you look at something like let's go with a lot of like quote unquote like thinker movies. If you look at something like Taxi Driver, Shutter Island, even like some of Nolan's stuff, like if you go like Interstellar, like Inception, there are parts of those movies that are like really conceptual. But I always kind of get the vibes when those types of movies are done well, that the people making them like have all the answers, and they've just kind of whittled it down to a point where they're giving you as much as you need to then be curious about it and search out more. And Mother is like the opposite of that, where it's like he had the idea that I said about like, is it humans? Like, are humans the point of existence, or can the earth just exist? And then he immediately was like, oh no, well, it's just the earth can just exist by itself. And then just like made a movie from that, and like had absolutely no interest in like developing the idea or having a point of view other than to just like put it on the screen exactly as he saw it in his head at the like inception of the idea. Which is like a problem, because most movies that require like a lot of like depth and analysis are like what I said, they're like deceptively simple, right? It's like, you know, that the people making them like have it all laid out in their head, and they're making you do the work, as opposed to like them not knowing what the point is and making you do the work. The other major problem that I had with the movie, and we're just going to assume that at every podcast I'm going to reference Aaron Sorkin, but the other major problem I have...
that'll come to fruition. I think you're right.
Yeah, like, for me, listen, I don't know if I agree with, like, existence, like, the Earth just existing by itself, like, being enough or being the point of existence. Regardless of whether or not I agree with that. Like,
get into that.
Yeah, like, well, but I guess my point is, like, it doesn't matter, because if it was, like, a well-told... like, I'm totally fine with that being his point of view. Like, if that's his point of view, cool. The reason I bring up Aaron Sorkin is because one of the things that The West Wing was so lauded for was the idea that, like, in the writer's room, if they were going to talk about gun control, if they were going to talk about whatever, abortion, whatever, like a hot political topic, they would always have, like, researchers go out and, like, find, like, the quote that everyone uses is, like, find the two smartest people on, like, either side of the issue, like, find out what their arguments are, and then they would basically, like, give Sorkin those memos, and then he would, like, dramatize the argument between those two people, and ultimately, like, whatever his position was would win. So he's, like, a liberal, right? So, like, as most people in Hollywood are. So, like, if it was gun control, like, the person for gun control would always win, but the person against gun control wasn't, like, a fucking idiot, you know? It wasn't just, like, a slam dunk contest. It was like, oh, you actually had to win. And, like, the other major problem I have with this movie is the idea that, like, Aronofsky had absolutely no idea how to, like, articulate his thoughts on this matter, so he tried to take all the religious aspects and just, like, shoehorn in weird horror movie shit to be like, well, that's the bad guy, and J-Law's our hero, so of course her point of view is right. And it's just really boring, because it's like, well, I get it. Like, I get that it's your point of view, but there's nothing interesting about, like, pretending that, like, the Jesus character in this movie and turn it into, like, a horrific cannibal thing. Like, yeah, we get it. We get that you're not religious. Like, we get your point of view, but there's nothing clever about that. Like, and I have ideas for how it could have been done another way. We'll talk more generally first before I get into that. But, yeah, well, I guess for me...
Sorry to interrupt, but on that point of, like, you were talking about we understand Darren Aronofsky's views by watching this film. Actually, one question that I did have, and I've seen the movie twice now, is I still don't understand even if this... I don't know if this movie was pro-religious religion, because it could seem that way in parts, or anti-religion. I have no idea, to be honest.
So here's the interesting thing.
You guys.
Here's the, and this maybe, and I will say this, and then I think it'll transition well into kind of at least parts of what Carolina wants to talk about. I think he is very clearly like anti-religion, but his way of showing that is to treat the environmentalist character like a piece of shit the whole movie, and J-Law just gets shit on for 2 hours the entire fucking time. And yeah, I see what you mean, because it's like I do think that's ultimately his point of view, but his way of representing that really comes across strange to me. I don't think that was done well. And I think, yeah, like, again, to go... We'll even talk about more about technique later, but the idea that this movie was anything other than just like an interesting drama that they made, like just a drama that happened to have interesting subtext, but the idea that they had to go into like supernatural stuff and like weird horror, but it's not a horror movie. Like half an hour will go by with nothing horrific, and then there'll be like a jump scare. Like I literally, and like later we can do a fun segment where I just wrote like funny notes at various time codes of things that made me laugh. Because literally like a half hour into a movie, there's just a jump scare. And I was like,
it's a laughable movie.
I was like, is this a horror? Is this supposed to be horrific? And like the Jesus cannibal scene, again, it was such like a straw man thing of like, we get it. Like you think it's a cult.
Yeah, that was just purely for shock value.
Yeah.
Very cheap.
Anyway, Carol, I've talked a lot. You can now go.
Okay, first of all, I want to comment. Is it obvious that it's anti-religion? Because, like, his last 3 movies have all been about religion. Like, he is obsessed with it.
I feel like he likes it as a topic, sure, but I feel like he's not sophisticated about it at all. And I personally, like, I got the sense that it very much was, like, to the point where, I mean, we feel like, Jennifer Lawrence, like, gets raped in the movie. She gets beat in the movie. She literally dies at the end of the movie. And, like, Javier Bardem's character is like, well, I'll never be satisfied and I just have to do it again. And it just seems to me that, like, having the movie start with her point of view and then, like, end when she dies and, like, have it go back in that cyclical sense was, like, his commentary on, like, that's like it's like that's supposed to be wrong. Like it's supposed to be like the protagonist that like ends up failing, not being able to accomplish their goal, and we're supposed to sympathize with that. That's what I got. And the weird cultish, yeah, it's like the tragedy of it, and like the weird cultish shit. And also, I feel like if he was pro religion, to like put the religious stuff like as the horror aspect, but then also to like have such a trivial understanding of it's like. It's like when someone, like, tries to... Okay, let's get off this topic for a quick second. But have you guys ever, like, really, really loved, like, a subject? Whether it be, like, let's say video games, let's say a franchise, whatever. You guys really love a subject. And then someone comes and tries to have a conversation with you about it, and you just know they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they just, like, maybe they saw, like, a YouTube video about it. And, like, his take on religion is literally, like... He learned the Bible in Catholic school in like grade 8 and remembers like 4 stories and has absolutely no sense for like how to do it in an interesting way or maybe other potential interesting characters. And it's so heavy-handed the whole goddamn time. Like I literally, one of the funny texts I sent you guys was like, oh, Adam and Eve just got sent out of Eden and now Cain and Abel showed up, because it's like, how could it be anything else? And like that's the thing, people leaving this movie being like, you didn't like it because you didn't understand it. It's like, no, I liked it because it was so goddamn obvious. But, and this is another one of my problems, is rather than take the idea of like religion versus fucking whatever, like if you want to call it naturalistic explanations for stuff, whatever, rather than take that idea and like dramatize it, they were like, well, let's make it a mystery where to make the audience figure out what it is. But then the mystery was bad. So it's like 20 minutes into the movie, it's like, okay, I know what this is. And then it just is that for the rest of the movie. And I think, like, I genuinely believe that they knew that, because it's not a horror movie that then ends with, like, an insanely horrific thing for no fucking reason. And I'm like, oh, like, you knew that this movie was a dud and that was the only way you could think. Like, it just, yeah. Anyway. Continue, Carol. Continue with your thoughts.
Yeah, so I saw this movie a couple years ago just on streaming, and I like don't know if I entirely paid attention because I don't remember having any strong thoughts. But then I saw it this time, and all I had were very strong thoughts. So I just have to assume I didn't pay attention the first time. But yeah, I watched it with a friend this time. So like you, Marco, it was good to have someone just to like be like, wait, are we watching the same thing? Is this insane? Does this make sense? Am I hallucinating? Because it's so like off the rails. And I just like, my primary emotion during it was just like anger. Like, I was just really mad the whole time.
No,
I have a whole rant written out. We'll get to it. But
okay.
I just want to talk about it generally first. Yeah. But, yeah, my notes are insane. It's just like, the house has a baby, ? The house is pregnant? At the beginning, she always, like, puts her hand to the wall to, like, feel it out. Like, it's just
I think that was supposed to be like the house's like heart.
Yeah, the house is alive. Yeah, but yeah.
But I see what you're saying.
But yeah, it was just insane. And also I think somehow the first time I watched it, I missed, like, I mean, I knew by the end it was like a religious allegory, but I think maybe I'm not as familiar with religious stories despite going to Catholic school for my whole life. But yeah, upon second rewatch, I was kind of like Marco. I'm like, oh, this is like so obvious. How is there any other take? Like, honestly, if I didn't watch it with my friend Maya, it probably would have also taken me longer to pick up on it. Just because, like, even when the annoying doctor kept throwing up and, like, they showed, like, the cut in his side and it was the rib to make the woman. Like, I missed that the first time and I'm like, oh, like, of course. Like, he's handing it to you on a silver platter. And I just, like, love, also after, we'll probably also talk about it, but watching interviews with him and, like, the round table, and he is just so insistent that this is the only read. Like, God forbid anyone
That was
like,
hilarious to me.
It's, oh my god, if he's ever like, oh yeah, people are like, it's about famous people, he, like, gets so angry, and he, like, I don't know why. Like, he's such a character. I can't believe I didn't know anything about him until now.
He is the worst. I hate him, and to be fair, I've never really seen any of his other movies, but, like...
You haven't seen Black Swan even?
No. Or Requiem.
I haven't either.
But the thing is, anytime people talk... Yeah, like, anytime people talk about his movies, it's always with this sense of... Well, yeah, it's like a really important movie that you would, like, watch in film school to learn about technique. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, like, he just... I get it. Like, he was a really good, like, film school student who continues to make really good film school movies. But
yes, exactly.
That's all this is. Like, that's all this is. And, like, not to diminish, like, film... But it's, like, at some point you grow beyond that. Another thought I had, I just want to quickly say this because there's something I had that I didn't write down and I'm going to forget it. And then, Dan, I will let you go on with your thing.
No, go ahead.
Like, the reason I'm calling, and I don't want to talk too much about him because there's so much to talk about with this movie and I don't want to just shit talk him, but I guess, like, part of what really bothers me about him specifically is that if you look at other filmmakers, so let's say...
You mean filmmakers?
Yeah, like actual filmmakers. No, but if you...
Darren Aronofsky.
Like, the two I want to point out, well, let's do, like, Nolan. Let's just talk about Christopher Nolan. Like, Christopher Nolan's first film, Following, I don't know if you guys know anything about this movie.
I have not seen it.
Never
it was like his...
It
was like his first, like, post-film school movie, I think. But it was basically still a film school movie. And it was made on, like, a, whatever, 4,000... Like, it was a no-budget movie. Gotcha. And if you look at that movie, and I haven't watched it, but, like, I know about it. I've, like, read reviews about it. In that movie, it has all the things that we know as, like, Nolan tropes, right? Of, like, playing with time, playing with the editing, putting things out of order. Very Nolan-y, like, trope things. Mm-hmm. But what's so interesting about him and why he's, like, a filmmaker is that as his movies progress, even though he maintains, like, that thing that makes him him, he's always, like, adding layers on top of it. You know what I mean? And it's making it more complex, and it's also, like, fleshing out his storytelling and, like, learning new things. So if you look at, like, Batman Begins, the action in that movie is directed like shit, but then by the time you get to, like, Inception or Dark Knight, the action is way better directed, because it's, like, he's learning from it, and he's, like, improving his tools. And what really gets me about our boy Darren is that I feel like he has one thing, which is his thing that he graduated film school with, which is, like, really pretentious, whatever, like, up to your interpretation style of filmmaking. and it just seems like he's not really like done the thing of adding layers on top of that. Where it's like, if you told me this was his first film right after film school, I'd be like, yeah, like probably. Like that's exactly what this feels like to me. It feels like a film school student with money and actors.
Feels like a senior project.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
100,
he
and
get
that
a
was
good mark probably because he includes all the classic elements of a film you need. But no, yeah, I see what you mean for sure.
Well, I mean, even that's debatable, but I still think you get a really good mark for.
You would get a good mark.
Will give his opinion.
Yeah. Dan, yeah, go on, Dan. I want to get your thoughts, not just like obviously like your second time around, but just in general.
Okay, so there's a couple things I want to quickly touch on, like one thing each that you guys mentioned. So, I just want to say, Carol, I'm in the same boat of like, in the sense that the first time I saw it, which was a few years ago, I understood, like coming out of the theater, that it was like a religious allegory. I didn't quite get like literally the Bible from start to beginning, like retelling of that. But I did understand that it was a religious allegory, and I had to like look some stuff up afterwards. And then the second time I watched it, which was just last night, because I was like seriously putting it off for this episode. But the second time I watched it, it was like, how could I not have seen this the first time? And there were so many times when like I just laughed out loud, because like the first thing that comes to mind that I want to talk about is when Javier Bardem, who plays God, I mean, it's weird calling these characters by their names because they're not actually characters, and I want to talk about that later because I want to talk about
they call
film
them
characters.
Him and mother, so it's hard.
Let's just call them by their Bible counterparts.
All right,
we all know who we're talking about. Like,
for me, one of the funniest parts is when God expels Adam and Eve from Eden, which is just Javier Bardem silently pointing for them to get out of his study. Because I didn't mention in the synopsis, but in that very thin literal plane of the movie where it's not like where you don't have to look at them as Bible characters, Javier Bardem plays a writer, a poet, if you will.
Of course.
And like his writings are creation and whatever. So his study is like Eden. Yeah. So when the Adam and Eve characters break the quote unquote forbidden fruit, which is like this gem in his office, it's just hilarious to me when he like, it's so forced. He's just like he faces the ground and silently points them out of the office, and that's just, I think that's my favorite part of the movie, to be honest.
That made me laugh too. I got a good laugh from that.
And also, sorry to cut you off, just now it clicked to me that when he kicked them out and then Jennifer Lawrence like walks in on them having sex, it's because they had to procreate to make the sons to show up later.
Right.
By the way,
isn't that so deep?
I have a note on your note. So my tangent from your tangent is that I made a note at that part of the movie that was like, did Tommy Wiseau direct this movie? Because the way their sex scene is shot, I don't know if it's anatomically possible. Like they're fully clothed. He's like laying on his back. She's sitting upright, like 90 degrees to him. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
And also, there's a couple other points before that throughout the movie where they just start randomly making out, and it's just that's another like that's just it was just played so horribly. It's hilarious. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was actually, I can't remember what the other thing I wanted to talk about was because I'm thinking about that pointing scene still.
Yeah. It's so good, dude.
Shit, maybe it'll come back to me, but
no worries, we can move on to something else.
I'm sure we have a lot to discuss.
There's so much to discuss. So let me think about something else that I wanna point out. There's so much worth pointing out in this movie. Okay, so I guess let me talk about. Let's go into the idea like Darren and I were kind of talking about like story structure. Obviously, like as we've mentioned before, but I think for me especially, like I definitely come at movies from more of like a story structure perspective. That's probably because I like got into movies based on adaptations of like books and comic books. So I was always like a bookworm. So I was very much a structuralist. Then got into movies from that, and kind of stayed in movies. But that's still what I look for, really. And I can like appreciate whatever artistic technique, like sure. But at the end of the day, like a movie, you know, it should function a certain way. It's something Dan and I have talked like at length about, is the idea that you can't make a movie that's a giant metaphor, because by definition, like a metaphor needs to have a literal aspect that it's like then representing something else. Like a metaphor has to be connected to a literal thing. And I think that's another part of where this movie fails, is that there is no literal story. Like the literal story just is the metaphor, which is nothing, which is then where, and I think this is where it starts to fall apart, is because if you're going to do that, then the only way to get some of the shit across is to have supernatural stuff happen. So then by definition, it becomes this weird horror, not horror movie, which is really to the movie's detriment to me. Like I stand by that.
Yes. And that's a great point, because what I wanted to add was theoretically, like any functioning movie, any functioning script should be like a metaphor. Like every script has to have that level, and this script does. And then the other thing that a script has to have, it has to have the literal part, and this script does not have that. So like for some reason Darren Aronofsky thinks this is such a clever, deep script. He's only made half of a script. Right? There's nothing clever about what is being done here, like at all. And this movie thinks that like itself is just the most clever thing ever created. And I think that's what bothers me the most about it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think one of the more frustrating things for me definitely is the idea that you're totally right. Like every story at its core, and I mean forget movies, every story at its core, but like in particular movies, has like two planes of action in terms of like it has, like a lot of people refer to it as like the inner journey and the outer journey, right? So the outer journey would be like the literal plot, and then the inner journey is like what the movie's about. So if you look at like any good movie, like just pick one, literally,
or
pick
any
one.
Not even any good movie, like
just a movie,
any movie.
Yeah, like just let's go Social Network. Like Social Network is literally about the creation of Facebook. Social Network is about the deterioration of a friendship, you know? And like that's what that movie's about. Like the climax of that movie isn't him like pressing enter and Facebook goes live. The climax of that movie is like Eduardo coming and breaking the laptop on his desk and being like, fuck you, like we're not friends anymore, I'm gonna sue you for everything. Like anyway.
It's the devolving of a human being. That's what that movie's really about. Yeah,
and you're totally like, that is, it's not just a movie that wants to have metaphor. You're right. Like that is the basis of any structure of anything ever, period.
It has to be.
It has to be. So, yeah.
And I also remembered... Sorry, I remembered the other thing that I wanted to talk about before. It's not really about the movie itself, but when I watched the Roundtable interview, I just wanted to make a note. Maybe this is just me, but I actually... Like, this is the first time I saw Darren Aronofsky, like, be... Like,
me too.
I've actually seen him.
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of... Like, when he started talking in the interview, I kind of liked him a little bit more than his work portrayed him to be, I guess.
Interesting.
Like than the picture I had of him after I had watched Mother.
Sure.
I don't know, maybe it was just the way like he was getting along with the other writers, but he seemed slightly less pretentious than his movies. I just wanted to say that. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I have a thought about that as well. My thought about that, and then I'll let Carol talk, is that I agree with you that he didn't seem super pretentious. However, what he did seem to me was just like a generic white guy.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Who, it's just like...
I don't know why he was there.
And I point this out endless, and I want to say something here, and I want to be very clear about something. I don't want to mince words, right?
Oh, God.
When minorities talk about like representation in like the film community, both in like the acting world but also in the production world, I feel like the generic white guy response to that is, oh, so like Martin Scorsese shouldn't be allowed to make movies anymore? And it's like, no, talented people should be allowed to make movies, but like Darren, to me, is the epitome, like the definition of just like a person who would not have a career if he wasn't just a generic straight white guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is nothing about him that screams multi-million-dollar film screenwriter and director. He is a good film school student who should have went on to do just whatever film school students who don't go into Hollywood do. You know what I mean? Like, he could have a perfectly reasonable job doing something very reasonable, no harm to him.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
think
like,
he should have been a director.
the idea that, like, we all know, and I would say the general population knows who, like, Darren Aronofsky is. Like, if you say his name, people are like, oh yeah, that, like, he's made some famous movies. But someone like Patty Jenkins, it took her literally making Wonder Woman to get, like, name recognition, even though she's made a bunch of other shit. And also, like, even still, if you said, like, do you know who Patty Jenkins is? Most people would be like, no. But if you said, do you know who Darren Aronofsky
that's so
is?
Unfortunate.
It's like, yeah, it's ridiculous to me. Anyway, Carol, go ahead. Have some more thoughts on this movie.
Yes. I guess also with the round table, I did not expect him to sound the way he sounded. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
You hear his name, and I think, okay, a German man. And then I see him, and I'm like, a French hipster? But then he just has the most just, like,
New York,
plain
like...
white American dude voice ever. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I agree. He doesn't, like, really live up to seeming super pretentious. If anything, like, almost he sounded a little, like, dumb.
Yeah.
Even, like, it's when he was... okay, just for reference, I don't think we ever explained. We're referring to... it's one of the Hollywood Reporter roundtables for... what was it? Directors? Writers? I can't remember.
I think it was
Writers.
screenwriters, because Sorkin was in it, so was Jordan Peele. Also,
Yeah.
Can we just take 1 second that he was in a roundtable with Jordan Peele and Aaron Sorkin for screenwriting? Okay,
Yeah.
Carol, continue.
Yeah. And at one point, he literally goes... yeah, you know how in the movie Mother the Baby died? It's literally only because I saw this one viral video of tourists carrying around a baby dolphin to take pictures with it, and then it died. He could have made it something so deep, and he was like, no, I saw this video, and I wanted to incorporate it. That's it. Like, I could not believe that was his one and only inspiration for that scene. Because it was such
that
like,
is
a
the epitome
moment.
of his thought process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that one thing explains everything to me. Like, I get it all now. It doesn't make me like him or hate him anymore, but just like, I guess it makes sense now. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's who he is.
Yeah, so this movie made me mad. Maybe I'll get into my rant now because you guys talked
Yeah,
for a
go
while,
for it.
so now I can.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Lay it on us. Lay it on. I'm excited.
Me
This
too.
movie made me and my friend feel like we were absolutely insane. I don't want to, like, be that one girl who, like, took a feminism in media course and now think I'm, like, a professional. But, like, that's probably what it's going to sound like. But this movie is just, like, fucked up towards women. Like, it just sucks to watch as a woman. Like, you guys, like, alluded to it. Like, it's obviously not hidden. But just, like, I get that it's a biblical allegory and, like, a lot of the stories that it references were during times that, like, weren't great for women, and arguably, like, no times are great for women. But, like, even just talking about, like clothing decisions and filming decisions, like, there's no reason for Jennifer Lawrence to start the movie in a 100% sheer nightgown.
Dude.
No woman wears that to bed!
If I look at my first note on this notepad, and you guys can confirm here, was seeing J-Law's nips worthwhile? ? Important ? That was my first, because I was like, oh god, what are we doing here? What is happening? Anyway,
Like,
continue.
It started with that, and I was like, oh, here we fucking go. But yeah, there's no need for that. No woman wears that to bed. Like, I get, like, basically it's just God's creation, and she's just there to serve Javier Bardem, so, like, whatever. Maybe that's what he wants, but just, like, not a good start. Like, most women were gonna wear, like, a t-shirt and some ratty-ass shorts to bed, but not that.
Sure.
That wasn't the worst part. But then you, like, even skip ahead to when she's getting beaten up by the worshippers, and then her boobs pop out.
God.
There's no reason for that. There, literally, no need. Like, at the end, like, I get you had to, like, tear out her heart. Okay, you'll see a boob. Fine. But, like, when she's just getting beaten up by the people, why? Just why? I don't know. Very frustrating.
Yeah, that was a disgusting scene.
Also, I liked how
A
we
lot
jumped
of it
over
was
the part.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really like how we jumped over the part where she gets raped in the middle of the movie.
Yeah. We definitely
Which
need
also
to
like,
acknowledge that.
and I will acknowledge a lot of this stuff when I do my pitch to fix this movie later. But and listen, like, and you're saying like not to seem like a girl who took a like feminism in film, whatever. The truth of the matter is, like, just as like a generic white dude guy who has not taken a class like that or anything, like I was just watching this movie and was like, this is fucking weird. Like, I don't know how anyone can watch this movie and not be like, why is she being filmed this way? Like, and also, like, isn't there a better way to get the point of this across without having to literally show her be abused the entire, like, 2 hours of this movie, and there's not, like, one frame of it where she's not being emotionally or physically abused. The entire fucking movie.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Continue with your rant, Carol.
Yeah. But also to go back with the, like, rape scene, I mean, she didn't explicitly give consent, but it was obvious that she had been trying to be intimate with him for a while and he wasn't having it, like, allowing that. And then Michelle Pfeiffer comes in and keeps bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up. So, like, obviously there was still no consent, so it was unconsensual sex. But I don't think it was necessarily, like, a violent, egregious, like, rape scene. You know what I mean?
It's not like your traditional
Yeah.
To your
Yeah.
point,
scene.
I know what you're saying. I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. My takeaway from it and what I felt so weird about it is that where it happens in the movie, this is supposed to be like the euphoric moment before everything then goes to shit.
Yeah.
And it was weird to me the way it was filmed. Like, just the way that scene was put together, where it's like, it's not, whether or not it's like technically rape, but it was just like the way it was shot and the way it was put together and how abruptly it happens. I was like, this doesn't feel in any sense.
It's
Like,
uncomfortable.
it's uncomfortable. It was just an uncomfortable scene in the movie. And I was like,
the whole thing was like, the whole movie.
sure.
It was even more uncomfortable than
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
baseline of uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it stood out to me as like, this
Yeah.
is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just why I didn't include it in my male gaze notes. I'm not saying it wasn't a rape or it was a rape, but, like, that's just why it was
I got you.
flow.
Listen, there's so much worse. I know. I got you. Just.
But yeah, like, so just in less of, like, a male gaze cinematography standpoint, just, like, seeing a woman created just to, like, dote on this man and the home and, like, her whole purpose is eventually to save him, like, sucked. Like, watching her just stuck in that house, like, cooking and cleaning and renovating and being, like, quote-unquote happy to do it when he, like, so clearly did not give a shit about her or her feelings or anything she did was just, like, so fresh. Like, it made me feel physically, like, in pain. Like, I was just so annoyed. I, like, was in pain. And I was, like, watching with my friend and just yelling and, like, I know that it's mostly, like, our friends listening to this podcast, but, like, I feel like if some other man ever watches this, he'd be like, oh my god, this girl's, like, ranting about nothing. But it's just, like, so annoying to see a woman
It's not
like my
nothing.
It's not nothing. Dude, Dan and I are straight white guys who are here to tell you this was fuck. Like, it was...
Yeah.
Like, we were watching this movie, like, what the hell is happening right now? Like, is this actually the decision, like, process you've gone... This is the road you've gone down to get your point across about environmentalism? Is this? Like...
Yeah. No, exactly.
And it was that then followed by, like, a revolution occurring in their house with, like, women trapped in cages and shit.
Yeah.
It was just so insane. And, like, I think at the end, seeing him, like, literally rip her heart out of her chest, implying that, like, as a stereotypical mother, she has to, like, still have love for him because a mother's love is, like, unconditional and never ending, and it was just so unsatisfying. Because, like, I know that it's, like, obviously it's a religious allegory and it's all in his head and it's all his interpretations, and it's never really implied that it's all this, like, fake fantastical world, but, like, obviously it is, because that stuff's not going to happen in any kind of reality. But, like, man, just, it's so to see her just beat up on and then to never actually get any redemption was so annoying. And, like, I get if she's Mother Earth, like, obviously we're beating her up and she isn't getting redemption, but, like, eventually when all of the humans die, like, she will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was so, yeah. And especially for a person, like, we've discussed, like, everything I watch, my opinion of it is largely based on just how it makes me feel. This just, I was just so angry the whole time. And normally my go-to feeling is sadness, but this time it was like, just, I was mad. And I already yelled about this so much with my friend Maya, but it was just nice to, like, write it out again and yell about it again. I feel a little bit better. I'm not going to say I like the film or Mr. Aronofsky, but I feel better. So,
okay. I'm glad you feel better, at least. I'm glad this was at least therapeutic. Let me, I'm going to address some stuff in that, and then I'm going to give my pitch for what I think would have worked better, and then we'll get your guys' thoughts. We'll let Dan jump in some more here. I know you and Carol and I are kind of hugging the floor because we've just seen this for the first time. Or, I mean, Carol's technically seen it before, but, like, she didn't really remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, so, to what you're saying, I 100% agree about her just being, like, beat down the whole movie. And it's weird because I think he does it on purpose, so that way by the end of the movie you sympathize with the idea of, like, Mother Earth and, like, look what we're doing to Mother Earth. Like, that's clearly his, I think, his message. The frustrating thing is that because it's not done in a narrative way, because the whole thing is just a metaphor, like, he designed it to be this way. It's stylistically designed to be a movie where a woman gets beat on for 2 hours. And it's like, you could not think of one better way to do a movie about environmentalism than that. And then the other problem I have, and this is going to, like, lead into my pitch to fix it, is, like, it's frustrating to me to go back to the idea of, like, this like a straw man argument versus actually having your side win in, like, a proper debate. Like, it seems like he doesn't know anything about the New Testament, but, like, he desperately wanted to include stuff from the New Testament, because here's what like, his New Testament stuff is, like, she's Mother Earth, but then she's also Mary because she gets pregnant with Jesus, but then, like, the God character writes the New Testament while she's pregnant, which doesn't make sense, because it should be that, like, after all the crazy shit happens, and after the baby is eaten and whatever, then he would write the book, and then he would get famous, if, like, that's what you wanted to do. But it's like, no, I guess he writes it when she gets pregnant, so right there, it's like, like, for a movie that's entirely metaphor, you fucked it up. You immediately fucked it up. Like, you just completely didn't understand what you were doing.
Well, but then, okay, on that point, I wanted to say, how I perceived it was he writes and then it manifests. So,
okay.
He's the creator, so he's the poet, he writes what happens and then it happens in the movie, you know?
Are you telling me he wrote that
it doesn't
whole
excuse,
revolution?
listen, that's not an excuse for the quality of this film.
That is fair. That's a fair point. I still think because he's a character, because, like, the God character is a character in the reality of this, and we're seeing it happen in a linear way, I still feel like it would make more sense for him to write it after. It would make more sense for him to write it after. You're right. But I do get what you're saying. I guess that also works as an interpretation of it.
Sure.
The other thing I want to point out, though, is, like, how weird everything gets, because the movie is supposed to be about how...
What do you mean?
Like,
that was totally normal.
Yeah, the movie is about how, like, Mother Nature is just happy being with God. Like, for Mother Nature, as long as it's just the existence of, like, the house, which is the earth, or whatever, that's enough, right? But then she doesn't flip out and give up and be like, I have no love left to give, until after Jesus died, which would be, like, a Mary thing. But it completely mixes the metaphor, because, like, for her, like, the point of no return should be, like, the initial human. Do you know what I mean? The movie should be about, is it worthwhile to have humans or not? And then once God decides to have humans, that's the point at which it's like, that's the end.
But the initial humans weren't technically an issue.
But, like, if you're going to do a movie, like, thematically for me...
Yeah.
Like, not that the initial humans are an issue, but if you were going to do this type of movie and have the idea be, like, we both know where this is going to go and we both know how this is going to end, and have God be all well, it's worthwhile. This is the point of existence. And Mother Nature be like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
To me, that's like a stronger thematic thing than having this weird mixed thing where she ends up being Mary and then like for some reason only gets mad after like Jesus dies, except like she doesn't want humans in the first place because the entire first half of the movie her house is getting fucked up anyway. So it's like, so that's weird.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about that until now actually, but her whole problem is humans on Earth, aka people in her home.
Yeah.
But when she wants to actively have a baby, which would be a human on the Earth.
Yeah. It doesn't
so that really doesn't make any sense. You're right.
So here's my solution. Okay? And I also I want to point out one more thing before we get to my solution, which is, as we were talking about with like, could you not think of a better way to show all this?
Yeah.
The idea that his representation of Mother Earth and nature is a woman taking care of a house is like, how did anyone think that was a good idea? How was that
approved?
How did literally anyone hear that pitch and be like, oh yeah, this won't be a problem?
Well,
this is totally
notorious for just like
Hollywood.
getting his way anyway. You know what I mean? Like he said so many times that he just like doesn't let critics see it, or he like will tell his initial pitch and then someone will buy it because he's Darren Aronofsky and why not? They trust him, and then he just like does what he wants. So
yeah, and that seems believable to me anyway, because like that is not the worst thing that has been approved by even modern Hollywood. So
yeah, no, it just blows
really
my
not
mind.
A surprise to me at all.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Here's my partial solution to this. If you want, so starting from the premise of, I want to do a movie that is metaphorical for like, is the purpose of life just to have like natural life, or is like the biblical purpose of life in any way like true? Like, is humanity important? Is it not? Whatever. If you want to do that movie, regardless of how you want to have the outcome be, here's how you do it better. First of all, get rid of all the supernatural shit. It's not needed, and it just creates a straw man. It just distracts from the actual ideas you're talking about. Here's how it would work. Okay, you can pick a holiday. Let's just do Christmas if you want to be really heavy-handed about it. You know what I mean? We're really driving home. So, like Javier Bardem and J-Law are a husband and wife. Okay? They have a son. The son is married. And their son and daughter have one son in jail, one son who's dead. Okay? We can set this all up in the first act. They all come for Christmas, and let's say a family friend also comes for Christmas. So the movie is just a drama that takes place in this household at Christmas. But like the central like premise of the drama and how we like show the difference between like religious belief and naturalistic belief is like Javier Bardem and J-Law's relationship is like falling apart, it's deteriorating. And like as the movie goes on, we find out that like the central point of like why everything is starting to go to shit is that he really wanted to have a kid and she didn't. Like she was perfectly happy for their relationship to be just them two, but like he fundamentally believes like the purpose of a marriage is to have children. So then their son is Adam. Okay? Rather than do some weird shit where Eve literally is like a temptress that like fucks things up, you just have her metaphorically be Eve because she's like from an outside family that maybe like Javier Bardem and J-Law don't like. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? So that's who his son is married to. Their kids, obviously, Cain and Abel. One killed the other. One's in jail for it. And so you get this like multi-layered story about like parenting and the purpose of relationships, where it's like the central relationship of Mother Earth and God is falling apart, but then like Adam and Eve have a different perspective because one of their sons killed the other, so they have a different perspective on it. And then their friend that's also come to this can be symbolic for Moses. He can be like adopted, so he can have the perspective of someone who's adopted. Okay, so you condense it to like just the Old Testament, not even the whole Old Testament. You condense it to like Genesis and Exodus, just those characters. If you don't want to have the adopted friend who's Moses, fuck it. Fuck Exodus. You condense it to Genesis. You just have this generational thing of like various parents and their feelings on that. And you just make that movie and just make an interesting family drama that's about where like them trying to figure out what the purpose of a marriage is it to have kids or is it to be happy, can then like be metaphoric for what's the purpose, like is it biblical or naturalistic. And then obviously like it's not heavy-handed, like there's no scene where Eve shows up and like literally tempts Adam with a thing, and then they get kicked out of the house. It's just like, well, she's from a family that they don't like, so that's your connection to Eve. Anyway, so that's like my thing. It's like you get rid of the superstitious stuff, you put the metaphor on top of like a family drama that people can understand, and like the primary goal of something is just to be interesting. So if let's say this movie exists and we all see it, as long as the family drama is interesting, if you don't pick up on the metaphor for environmentalism, like, no big fucking deal. Like, you just watched a movie and it was entertaining. If you do, like, some thinking about it and you realize, like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense, that, like, that's their grandchildren are, like, Cain and Abel, and it all works, and, yeah, you tie all this together, great. But, like, the biggest problem with Mother, and, like, it doesn't have to be that. I'm just saying, like, that's one possible way to start from the same premise and, like, make something that's more interesting, because, like, the biggest problem with Mother was, in order to make, like, the way they chose to execute it. It's like, we have an interesting premise and we're going to execute it in like a pseudo horror movie with like weird stuff that happens like every half hour, but then the rest of the movie is a drama, but then no one has a character. And it's just nothing. It's just nothing. It's not anything.
But Marco, in your version, how does Kristen Wiig show up to execute a bunch of people? You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't work.
Well, I know. Unfortunately, we're going to have to make some cuts of some actors.
But that's the best part.
But I think it'll be...
I forgot about that. I just watched it last night, and I actually forgot about that already.
Scene in my head.
And also, like, again, like she kills 6 people, and then she's like, let's look for 6 more. And I'm like, we get it. The 12 apostles. We get it. Oh, my God. And also, like, what does that even mean? Like, what does it mean? Like, okay, cool. You made a reference to the 12 apostles. Thanks.
Okay, but
how does this have anything to do?
Fun little Easter egg there, guys.
In that part of the movie, nothing makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, they drop those very obvious Easter eggs.
It gets batshit crazy.
Like, there's just too much to even follow. Like, I'm sure if you, like, tried to track every single event that happened, like, I'm sure it all means something. But just when you're watching it, it's just like, okay, people are in cages. People are shooting each other. There's cops. There's not cops. There's blood. There's people with bags over it. Like, you truly, like, can't follow anything that's going on.
I can see the IGN video now where it's like top 20 Easter eggs you didn't catch in Mother.
It's like, exactly. Did you know that the doctor is Adam?
Well, it's also like, and I guess like that's the frustrating part, and like what I tried to really address, like in my like possible fix is, we don't need to go through the whole Bible.
Yeah.
Like, your movie is thematically about, is human life important or not? Like, that's thematically what your movie's about. So all you need to worry about is like the first generations of human life. Like, you literally only you need to worry about is like, if you want to do the Bible stuff, I mean, like, if you really want to do the whole Old Testament, like, go ahead. But like, you really just need Genesis, and it's like, you take that as your starting point. You take like Adam and Eve or like Adam, let's say in this example, being born as your starting point, and then you just like create an interesting story from that. And the interesting part isn't like weird supernatural shit. It's like the debate between these two characters about like what the purpose of life is. Like, that's what would make this movie interesting. But instead, you know what we get? We get freaking J-Law looks in the toilet and there's like a weird floaty thing in there.
Okay, yeah, what was that?
Oh.
Is that his rib? Is that supposed to be his rib?
I don't know. It looked like fleshy though.
That's what
I think it was supposed to be like, yeah, I think it was
one of my questions I had
rib.
for you guys, because this is something that the internet cannot agree on. There's many things the internet can agree on. I have lots of questions. I want to hear all of your opinions. But yeah,
let's
well,
go through.
That's my first one. I don't know what.
So I want. We should do your questions, and then also my notes are all just time codes with funny things. So to end this off, we could just read my time codes of funny things because they're pretty funny.
Okay, great. So flush in the toilet. What do you think?
Dan, what's your theory?
Sorry, I'm pouring more wine if you hear that in the recording. That's just, you know.
Oh yeah, Carol and Marco are drinking for this.
We had to,
and
man.
I don't blame them.
It was the only way. It was the only way.
I'm so sorry for suggesting this. Technically,
oh yeah,
Dan
I wanted to mention
too.
I suggested this episode, and I just want to say, if it's any consolation, after rewatching last night, I completely regretted it. Not for this conversation, but for the preparation part.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
say, I made you guys watch Lord of the Rings and Fleabag.
Yeah, I feel
And
really bad.
You
I
guys
chose
made me watch
Fleabag.
Mother.
Yeah.
So, it's okay. Next week will be fun. But
Yeah, we'll talk about it. But
anyway, Dan, what's
but yeah, I
your
don't
theory
know.
on the Flesh? Yeah.
It must be something. It's got to be something related to Adam's rib because he was like throwing up in that
Yeah.
toilet the night before, and that's when you see the mark by his rib. That would be my guess.
Me too.
But if his rib was used to make Eve, it shouldn't be in the toilet.
That's true,
It's
but I mean,
busy.
none of this movie
Yeah,
makes
but then
literal sense anyway.
Also, yeah, why would Eve be like alive and already married to him? Like they're not meeting for the first time. So like you can't think of it too hard. It's just a visual that's
Yeah.
supposed to make you
Okay.
think of something. So
Here's one question I had though: is what is that? What's the stuff that Jennifer Lawrence keeps drinking? Like she keeps mixing it
Yes.
into the
I
into the
have-
water. There's like this glowing yellow liquid or whatever that she a couple times throughout the movie she like mixes it into a drink or like a glass of water and drinks it. I don't know what that's supposed to be alluding to.
I need to
So I
say,
wanted to ask you guys.
Darren Aronofsky in an interview said this is the one thing he is taking to his grave. He will not tell anyone what the yellow liquid
Okay,
is.
so he doesn't have the answer.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. Okay. That makes
Just
me feel
to say
better.
that before
Alright.
we give our thoughts. There is no
This
answer.
What a
was-
hack.
this was such a bland movie visually that he was like, we need something to spice this
We
up.
need color.
We need color. We need some color in this movie of brown.
But I mean, good for him because he did carry the yellow theme throughout. Like the walls were yellow, the light in the fridge was even like the same color yellow. I'll give him that.
To
He
be
made
fair
the
though,
yellow
that
seem super
most of that's
important.
probably done by the production designer and like the cinematographer and stuff.
Well, I was gonna say maybe he like requested it, but I don't know.
No. We know he did.
Well, he could have. You're right.
Yeah.
No. I don't think so.
No.
I just fully disagree with that. Okay, more questions. Who's got a question? This is question
But
time.
with the yellow, I did do some research to like what people thought. Like initially when I saw it, I was like, okay, it's like some anti-anxiety if we're taking it literally. Because like I don't know what other purpose it would serve. I don't recall any specific yellow liquid being mentioned in the Bible or in the history of the earth.
Yeah, I have no idea what that's supposed to be.
No idea at all.
But a bunch of people on the internet have compared it to this short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman called The Yellow Wallpaper, because it's about a woman suffering from postpartum depression, and her husband thinks she's just insane and like locks her in this house to like deal with it. And it's a house with yellow wallpaper, which seems like probably an obvious allusion to it, unless it was just a coincidence, but that kind of seems far-fetched. And so, like, the whole story is just, like, she's trapped in this house and eventually goes crazy. And it was in a time where, like, you couldn't, like, as a woman, be depressed or have anxiety or anything. It's just, like, a slight hysterical tendency. And so it's just about her, like, thinking, like, imagining a woman behind the wallpaper and then eventually, like, becoming the woman behind the wallpaper. But, yeah, so people are thinking it's kind of like that because it is a woman trapped in a home with yellow wallpaper. But that could just be a crazy coincidence. I don't know.
I feel like it is a coincidence because this movie it's not nearly progressive. Like, it's fake progressive. It's not nearly actually progressive enough.
Dan, I was going to say the exact same thing. I was like, there's no goddamn way that this guy who used every excuse to get J-Law topless in this movie was also like, yeah, let's reference this
And then
really
they
progressive
dated.
thing. They were dating in real
For, like,
life.
a
Yeah,
year.
we should mention that.
I was like, how could you film this movie, which is so, like, anti-woman, and then date him? And also, he kept saying this bullshit about, like, the only people who, like, really got the film were, like, women, and, like, women directors, and women producers, and women writers. And
Right.
I'm like, really? Like, maybe I'm not, like, artsy enough, but, like, I can't imagine seeing this and being like, oh, I get it. Like, Darren, you're so smart. Like, no, fuck you. Like,
Yeah. Like, Darren, thanks for telling me how horrible life can be.
yeah. But he
Exactly.
kept insisting, like, women get it. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but I'm not fucking happy. Like,
Yes, exactly. Well, that's also, like, not to keep harping on this point, but, like, why is this, like, this movie became about whether or not you get it.
yeah.
And it's so frustrating because it's like, if a movie takes, like, one, maybe two viewings to get, it's not a did you get it movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't make that the draw of your movie when it's so fucking obvious. Anyway, let's just move on.
Another
Let's
question?
Just talk. Yeah, another question.
Why is the doctor, aka Adam, so sick the whole time? Was Adam
I
sick?
also had that question.
Did I miss that in the Bible?
I think it may have to do with, I think throughout the movie, and he doesn't do it technically chronologically, because you would, like, the plagues happen in Exodus, which is, like, long after Genesis, which is where all the Adam stuff happens. But they kind of stagger the 12 plagues throughout the movie a little bit. Not when it would... Because if you had all the 12 plagues take place at once, that would be too obvious. You know what I mean? It would be like, oh, the 12 plagues. And I think one of the plagues has to do with, like, thirst. And that's why he's, like, super, like, quenched and thirsty and, like, feeling sick. I think that's what that is. And if it's not that, then I don't know. Can't tell you. But I guess the thing, like, the other funny thing is, like, all these questions, they're not relevant. They wouldn't make the movie better. Like, there is no answer to this question that would make me go, Darren, you got me. Like, thank you for making such a masterpiece.
Like, why? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why would he do that?
Why something?
Yeah.
I think because, like, he very obviously was like, it's this, like, whole allegory, and so I think I went into it being like, okay, everything has to mean something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, even when Jennifer Lawrence goes down to the basement and finds, like, the big room that eventually, like, has the, like, gas thing that she used to set the house on fire, like, there's a frog in the basement, and in my notes I'm like, what does the frog mean? But, like, probably fucking nothing. Like, it's a plague thing, like the locust type business.
Yeah,
but, like, a frog isn't locust, you know what I mean? Like, just, if you've been so obvious about everything up to this point, why don't you just put, like, a fucking, like, grasshopper in there, you know what I mean?
Which would also make more sense than having a frog in the basement, too.
I
think, and keep in mind, I haven't taken a religion class now in, like, 6 years, but I think one of the plagues has something to do with frogs.
Yeah, I think it does, but again, like you were saying, none of this matters.
Damn. Yeah, no, true.
None of it matters. None of it matters. This movie is nothing. It doesn't matter. Anyway.
This movie doesn't matter, you're right.
I have a question. Can we please talk about my favorite thing in this movie?
Are you going to talk about the floor?
Which is...
Yes, can we talk about the vagina and the floorboard? What in the fuck? Who thought that was a good idea?
Also, I like how
is that what it's supposed to be, though? Like,
in the room with the vagina and the death.
Dan, I can't. It has to be. What else is it? What else would it be? Why does it?
I mean, I always just. That's a good point. I always just took it as like the house beginning to fall apart, but maybe you could be right about that.
I just don't know why else you would have like 16 cutbacks to it, and why would it would only stay that shape? Like, it has to be that. But again, does it matter? Does it matter if we know the answer? Is it supposed to be like? Anyway.
Yeah, I never thought vagina until you said so.
Well, it has to.
Yeah, me neither.
It just Darren exploiting women as per usual. It has to be.
Does the lighter fall through that? So like Adam brings a lighter because he's a smoker, which is another thing that doesn't make, like, I don't understand. Like, that leads to his coughing, but again, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But anyway, this character has a lighter, and doesn't it fall through that hole at some point?
I thought she knocked it behind a dresser. I don't think it fell through the floor. But, like, it must have if she had it to light it on fire, no? I didn't, like, pay that much attention to it.
Is that the only reason?
Again, seen this movie twice, and, like, even, like, the plot details, I can't
because she, like, covers the hole with a rug eventually. So I don't think the lighter fell through the hole.
Oh, yeah, and then they fix up the hole, and then it comes back later anyway, so...
Yeah, I do remember, like, when the blood originally came through the hole, and then, like, that light bulb exploded. I have a note that said... Because, obviously, I was looking for meaning and everything, so I was like, it's one of those films. I was like, when the light bulb exploded, the blood on the wall formed a sad face. So, you know, bad things are coming, guys.
I think that was supposed to be another plague thing, like the skies went red or whatever, and like the water becomes blood. I think that's what that's supposed to be.
Blood on the wall made a sad face.
So, let me ask you guys a question about this floorboard vagina. I can't get it. It's perplexing to me. So it's there's like blood around it at one point, right?
Yeah.
And then there isn't, but then there is again.
Yeah.
Okay. Stick with me.
Oh God.
Does the timing of it make sense with her getting pregnant, like, in between periods or something? Like, is this supposed to be a metaphor for, like, menstruation? Like, is that what this is supposed to be? Because, no, I need to understand what is the point of any of this.
I don't know.
That's
the blood
that's a great
does
question.
come back when she's setting up the nursery, but, like, still at that point she wouldn't have a period again because she's pregnant.
Yes, so that doesn't make sense.
No.
But, like,
So I'm sorry,
why?
I don't
does
think
it
it's menstruation.
But, like, what else could it... What?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Maybe it's, like, foreshadowing for, like, the death to come, because it comes from death. And then there's that period where, like, she's pregnant, everything's idyllic again. And then when the blood starts to show up again, very shortly after is when all the worshippers come. So maybe it's just, like, a death is coming again. Because, like, then there's
it could just be, like,
death.
a general, like, a supernatural omen or whatever. It might not be phallic.
Yeah,
Like,
or, like, a
her
period
house
thing.
responds to her mood.
I
Yeah,
don't know,
like,
he's
her house
so
definitely
pro-women.
reflects. Okay, guys. I don't know if you guys have more, like, little questions like that, which we can definitely keep going with, but I did want to mention, like, I got the idea, especially after that second viewing, of, like, this movie seems very, like, it seemed to lean towards the idea that Earth is the only planet with life because of, like, how I guess how much the house obviously represents Earth. Like, it definitely represents Earth and not just a generic planet because it's, you know, retelling the Bible and whatever.
Yep.
Did you guys get that too, where it seems like it definitely seems like Darren is the type of person, at least based off of this movie, that would maybe not believe that this could happen on any other planet.
So...
And I'm talking about life.
Yeah. So here's the not making this movie.
Not the Bible. Yeah, or not making this movie. Yeah.
Here's something I didn't think about at all until you just said this. This is interesting. I wonder if the idea of Mother Nature at the end, when the cycle starts again, being a new woman, is supposed to be representative of, like, this being attempted on different Earths, like different planets. Because initially when I saw that, I kind of got the idea that this is like one giant cycle of trying to get Earth perfect. But because they changed the actress at the end, I kind of get the idea of maybe it's supposed to be more like God going around trying this in different places to see where it actually works.
That's a good idea. I guess it really depends on, and we can't really answer this, but it depends on if it's the Bible story again, or if it's a completely new story, which we don't see.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point, actually.
That is, yeah.
I interpreted it as when eventually humans cease to exist, because, like, it will happen. Like, because the Earth is billions of years old and we haven't been on it forever. Like, eventually there will probably be a new form of life that is just as sentient as we are. So I know there wasn't a time gap in the story of the movie, but I just thought it was like, okay, humans tried, they died, a new round of human-like beings are trying again on this Earth X amount of years later. I don't know. That's how I imagined it. Just like, humans will fuck up, it'll happen again, that's kind of what we do.
Okay, that's interesting.
Like an extinction process, and then,
yeah,
like there have been on the Earth.
Yeah.
That's like
I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted to get your guys' input on that.
That's interesting, and it's like the only interesting thing in this movie, and it's right at the very end. And again, it's just like a conceptual thing that has no...
Well, yeah, this is something that we're bringing up and not even the movie itself, but...
That would be really... that would be fucking cool. So if you do, like, my idea, you could have, like, another far-off house in the distance that at some point someone travels to, and you can, like, use that as a parallel between different Earths. But again, no, it's just...
Yeah.
Why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that when you could do this?
Okay, this is kind of unrelated, but in my research, I found that apparently, because, like, Darren was like, I don't want to, because normally they have like show crowds of people it and have them give opinions and give a score to like help promote the movie, whatever. Darren was like, fuck that, I don't want to do that. So he just like went immediately to like the circuit of all the festivals. And apparently at Toronto, to promote the film, instead of having like obviously the critic scores or reviews or anything, he handed out a prayer, which is a version of, I guess, the Our Father, but he had Rebecca Solnit, which is like a feminist author, like basic, like a pretty like white feminist author, rewrite it. And I just thought this was really interesting and also like very indicative of his personality and like what his definition of woke is. And I just really wanted
Are you gonna
to
read
it to you. Yeah.
Please.
I have,
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was so intrigued. He handed this out to like the press and was like, "This is all you're going to learn about the movie. That's it. That's all he gave them."
Cool.
Our mother, who art underfoot, hallowed be thy names. Thy seasons come, thy will be done, within us as around us. Thank you for our daily bread, our water, our air, and our lives, and so much beauty. Lead us not into selfish craving and the destructions that are the hungers of the glutted, but deliver us from wanton consumption of thy vast but finite beauty. For thine is the only sphere of life we know, Dan, and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. So maybe he does only believe in Earth having life, just based on
I
that
wouldn't be
one
surprised.
line. But yeah, that's what he handed out to the press. And that's all they got.
Thank you very much for reading that. That was that
No
was great.
problem. Isn't that insane? He didn't even write it himself, also. He's just like, feminist author, go ahead, write Our Father, but like for Mother Earth, thanks.
This is
Yeah, that's so condescending.
Right?
It's such film school bullshit.
Like, I feel like if I met him, I would hate him. Like, he'd just be like the most pretentious person.
I mean, I haven't met him and I hate him.
Guys, like, and the thing that like really, really blows my mind is that like Javier Bardem, Jennifer Lawrence, Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer,
yeah,
frickin' General
all signed
Hux from
on.
Star Wars,
Yeah.
Kristen Wiig, like
Oh,
major
by the way,
movie stars, all were in this fucking movie.
and by the way, the brothers Cain and Abel, I didn't realize till after, but they were actually brothers in real life.
Yeah.
They were the Gleason brothers. That was cool. But yeah, no, excellent cast.
Oh, really? I only noticed Domhnall. I didn't know the other dude.
Yeah, and his brother was
The one that dies.
Brendan Gleeson, I think.
Cool.
Anyway, you're right though. Like, how did they get roped up into this? I have no idea.
Well, it's also just like sometimes I hear okay. Like Martin Scorsese had to go to Netflix to get the budget for The Irishman. And he's been trying to make that movie for 11 years, whatever. Darren, coming hot off of Noah, that was his last movie before this was Noah. Critical failure.
Yeah.
Just absolute disaster.
And like how many, it was like a bunch of millions of dollars, right? Like people were like not happy.
Definitely didn't make his money back. Darren gets the money to not only like make this movie big budget, but also cast some of the most famous movie stars ever. And I don't understand his success. Because there's no way this made money. There's no way there's no way Noah made money.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Black Swan was like a critical hit, but like, again, like, did that make money? Like, was that like a profitable movie?
Very niche.
I feel like that might have been like one of his most profitable, but like still nothing like an Avengers film profitable.
I mean, it's still like, how does Martin Scorsese with like an excellent track record in terms of not only making money back, but just like critical success, not get to make Irishman, but this fucker gets to make this movie no problem. Just walks in, guys, the Bible, but in the modern day, and also nature, and they're like, as much money as you need. As much. Just take it.
He's a trust fund. He's a privileged trust fund baby.
Yeah, he's such a prick.
And
I think I heard that he initially pitched it and people were like, and then he got Jennifer Lawrence, and then people gave him money.
Are you telling me?
I'm curious
Yeah.
This
to see how many. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, 'cause this was right after Hunger Games, right? Like, she was, like, famous.
this fucker
Yeah.
seduced Jennifer Lawrence into dating him just to get this movie made, and then they broke up as soon as it was done.
No. He got her for the film, and then after concept shots, they started dating. So she signed on before being into him. Just for the record.
But
I
I kind of feel like the timeline of that still adds up. That he was like,
no, for sure.
like,
Because like, especially since they were only together for like a year, like,
yeah.
it doesn't look good for him.
Yeah, not at all.
Or her. Like, come
And
on, you can do so much better than Darren Aronofsky.
And I'm really curious to see how much each of the, like, all of the talent got paid, because I feel like that would say a lot about how much faith they actually had in the project.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see if any of them actually thought that this was
I see what you're saying.
a deep project, you know?
Because like sometimes famous actors will do movies like for scale or whatever, which
Yeah,
basically
or like
just
Jonah Hill.
yeah. So they like
doing like Wolf of Wall Street for like $30,000 because
Exactly.
he really wanted to be in that movie,
Exactly.
for example.
Aw.
yeah, but this one
Yeah.
I assume they were all like fucking maximum amount of money. Like
Yeah.
I'm not being in this movie unless I get my full like whatever my full quote. God damn. I'm getting angrier about this as we go. Like, I'm not getting happier. This isn't resolving anything. It's just bringing up more issues I didn't even, like, think about.
Like, as much as I'm annoyed that we chose this and I had to watch it again and, like, feel that anger, I am glad we had this discussion. This is, like, fun. A fun discussion.
Yeah.
I'm still
This is
mad
interesting.
about the film
I'm enjoying this discussion.
as a concept and as a thing that got him money, and I assume, like, at least made him a little money, but, like, at least we had to talk about it. So, there's that.
Carol, did you have any more, like, questions?
No, I think we went
Like
through all my
random
questions and all my little notes. It was mostly about the yellow wallpaper and the way he, like, promoted this film.
Yeah.
So silly. But, yeah, no, I think we went through most of it.
Okay.
I also had some, like, general notes kind of like you, but without timestamps that were just like so dumb. I do need to mention that in the end, when she steals his heart and he like says some deep shit like, "Who are you? I am I," blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He kind of says the lyrics to the song "Last Christmas" by Wham. That's probably a coincidence, but I
Does
just
he
really
actually?
Yes, he does.
I love that song. Does he actually?
Yeah, I mean, it's in my notes, so I'm gonna trust it.
Okay, see if you can find it. That's actually hilarious.
But, you know, gotta love a good
So-
Christmas.
Jesus.
Is
yeah.
Darren
It all
Aronofsky like a huge
Goes
Wham
back
fan
to
then?
Jesus.
Is that what we're saying?
Yes, I think so. But yeah, no, I've gone through all my notes. I had a lot, and they were all pretty negative, but we got through it.
Okay. I have one question for both of you. I have a question for Dan, and then unless there's anything else, maybe we can move on to some of my random
Your fun
observations.
timestamps,
We'll just
yeah.
call them random observations.
Yeah, love that.
Here's my question for both of you, and I guess we
Okay.
kind of started talking about this at the beginning, but we didn't as it went on. What do you guys think his point of view is on the conflict of the movie? Because for me, as much as like J-Law gets shit on, I kind of feel like her getting shit on is supposed to be him saying like, hey, we need to like be more careful about the environment and religion is fucked, and not like a pro-religion thing. But it's interesting that like this whole idea of, is this his idea of life only exists on Earth, which is like inherently kind of a religious thing. So what do you guys think about that?
Carol, did you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Well, he is... I mean, his Wikipedia says he's an environmentalist, and I think he's a self-proclaimed environmentalist. So I think, like, the most obvious message of the movie, and I think the message that I got the first time I watched it was, like, we're treating the Earth very badly, treat her better. Yeah, I don't know. But I think because the first time I watched it, a lot of the religious stuff was just, like, a vague afterthought, and, like, the main message I got was just, like, be nicer to planet Earth. But yeah, I don't know if it was, like, necessarily a pro or con religion, because I don't think religion has much to do with the treatment of the earth. Like, I think he was very much like, this is an environmentalist movie, be nice to the planet. Like, yes, the religious allegory was there, and apparently because of all his last like 3 movies, he's very into religion right now, and how easy it is to take already written stories and use them in your own stories.
Yep.
So I think that was just like, I mean, a coincidence. I don't know if he was necessarily like, the point of this movie is, yes, religion good, no religion bad. I think it was like, as he pointed out with like the baby dying was literally just a baby dolphin for tourists. Like, he is very much of one mind on it. So I assumed it was mostly just like, be nice to the planet. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely, so I just wanted to say, like, theoretically, the message he's sending here should be a positive one. Like,
yeah,
the message that I got from the movie is treat the environment better. You're right. Like, that's objectively a great message, right? It's just the approach that he took was extremely lazy and just uncomfortable, to the point where, despite it being a really good message, it doesn't convey, at least for me, and I'm assuming with most audiences, it doesn't convey very well. So it seems ineffective, and it might give off the idea that maybe that wasn't even the message, you know? Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is basically good message on paper, but not in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm all for save the earth. Like, that's obviously a message I'm very behind, but like, why did it make me feel so bad? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't executed well.
No.
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's more effective to get people to rally behind a cause in a more positive way, rather than saying like, you're a piece of shit. You're one of those people that's fucking killing J-Law right now. Like, that is such an...
Yeah.
And then, not even to mention, like if you're a woman in the audience who's then, like... Anyway, it's messed up.
If you treat the audience with respect, you will...
Yeah.
There's more likelihood that they will receive the message better and you know, enforce it in their own lives.
Yeah. My last thoughts on this is just... And I think you guys both kind of touched on this. Like, the execution of it's so weird. And for me... If the idea is an environmentalist thing and it's about like having to treat the earth better, but at the same time it is kind of about like, is it even possible to have humanity on an earth that doesn't end up in disaster? It's weird that they painstakingly put so many Bible references in it, because it's like there's a way to do that without retelling the Bible. You can, even if you want to use like specific religion examples, you can like cherry pick some if you want to cherry pick Adam and Eve or whatever. But like, to go all out the way they did was really like distracting. And to your guys' point, like, I really think it takes away from the message when like most of the time I'm watching the movie, I'm just thinking, why are we doing this religious stuff? And then even at the end of the movie, which should be this like really emotional thing of like Mother Earth dying, I'm just thinking like, Was the whole eating Jesus thing necessary? Was that really like, you know what I mean? It's just, and again, like, if you didn't like go to, I went to like a Catholic grade school and high school, took religion that whole time. You have to. If you don't have that background, maybe it's not as distracting. It was really distracting for me when I was watching it. Whereas like, I'm trying to focus on the environmentalist positive stuff, and you keep fucking throwing shit in there for no... Anyway, it was ultimately just distracting, and I think it was like the wrong course of action to take. But to Carol's point, I feel like he just had this idea of, I want to make an environmentalist movie. Well, I've done a lot of religious studying for my last 2 movies, so rather than think of like a plot, I'll just take that shit that I know and like use that. And like, no one, because he's Darren and he's like the new goddamn George Lucas, no one tells him no. So he just does whatever the fuck he wants.
I think after this movie, people will start telling him no.
Dude,
I think it was like a major failure in like the box office.
And to be clear, like, I genuinely like, for him to make, was Requiem like his first movie, like his first post-film school movie?
I think Pi was his first film.
Okay.
I think that was before.
Like, the
Black and
dude
white.
is not untalented, but it's just really troublesome to me that there's like no progression in the way that like we talked about Nolan having progression. It's really troublesome to me that he has like certain tricks that he latches onto and he like refuses to layer it or learn more.
There's
He's
no growth.
51.
There's no growth.
Sorry, I'm just on his. I just wanted to see like the order.
He's
of his
51?
films. He's 51 years old, and Pi was indeed his first film.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
wow, he's
I-
older than I thought.
And this will actually kind of tie into my last question that I specifically want to talk about Dan about because it's more of a technique thing. I found the cinematography in this movie in some parts to be like, and the editing, I guess to some degree, to be borderline laughable. There's like a couple of scenes where they cut to like insane close-ups where I was like, this is so distracting and so weird. And then also like the use of, like we talked about, there's like 2 jump scares in the movie and it's like it's like they didn't know, like, are we making a horror movie? Are we making a drama? Are we doing a weird documentary thing where we're super close up on people? Like, they just jump between, like, so many different things that it was really just like, guys, pick something, stick to it, and, like, do that throughout the movie so it doesn't stick out so much.
Sorry, what were the
Yeah,
2
okay.
jump scares before Dan answers? Just for
There's,
the
like,
audience
one-
and a reminder for myself.
I literally don't remember.
Oh, I think I remember.
There's like one
Okay.
when she's like standing in the house and she turns and like I think like Domhnall Gleeson
Yeah.
like shows up again or whatever. I think that was one of the ones I was thinking of. There's another one earlier. I don't know. Dan, do you?
There's one when like Adam stays over and the next morning she closes the cupboard and he's like
Yes.
Right.
there
Yes.
beyond the cupboard.
That was the one that
And then-
fucking pissed me off. I was like,
There's
fuck you.
one other one too. The one that I first think of when you say jump scare for this movie is when she's looking out the window and she like turns the porch light on or something and there's someone outside of the window, like a follower.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the jump scares definitely just added in because he's trying to salvage this into a horror movie. Like for me, there's no doubt about that.
Yep.
They don't belong in this movie at all.
Absolutely.
That might have even been like a slight studio decision. I know he says like he really didn't tolerate studio interference, but that could have been like a small little, something from the studio.
That to me
Like a
really,
suggestion.
it really sticks out as like, what is this movie? How do we sell this movie?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it's actually an environmental. And they're like, okay, it's a horror movie. Go put in.
So we need to have
Yeah.
at least some little bits of horror. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all that is to me. It's not effective. It was
Exactly.
stupid. And then in response to the shot choices, I guess, I also just want to mention that I did watch the Red Letter Media review in
Oh my God.
preparation for this, and we should just
Ooh,
briefly
I did
mention
not.
that Red Letter Media is an excellent YouTube channel that does primarily movie reviews, other stuff too, but they're
my
very
go-to
funny.
as
I mean,
well. Yeah.
yeah, they're great. I mean, like, it doesn't really make sense for us to give them a shout out because, like, we have, like, 100 listeners per episode, which we're thankful for, by the way. We didn't mention that. Thank you for the support up to now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, definitely check out Red Letter Media if you're into this stuff. Anyway, I did watch the review again. I watched it after both times seeing the movie, and I think Jay, one of the members of Red Letter Media, made a good point about the cinematography, was that, like, despite being in this giant house, the close-ups really gave you that claustrophobic, like, unsettling feeling, which I feel was intentional for this movie. So if there's one thing about this movie that worked, like, well, not one thing, because you were talking about the color choices too, but if there's, a couple things that worked about this movie, it's maybe that and some of the cinematography choices for me, at least.
That's fair. I guess for me, it just goes back to them trying to put this through a horror movie lens, where it's like, if you're trying to put it through that lens, I guess why you're doing it, but the fact that you're trying to put it through that lens in the first place, just to me is like, well, you just have no fucking idea what the best way to get across this story is. Like, if you had this idea and your like thought was, oh, you know how we'll do this best, like in a horror movie, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna put horror movie elements, it's just like,
But all of his films have been kind of like, not like horror-ish, psychological
Like
thriller-ish. Like that's his kind of genre. Even in The Round Table, the writer of The Big Sick, I can't remember her name right now, was like, I describe
Emily.
your films. Emily.
I think
Gordon.
it's Emily Gordon, right?
Yeah, she's like, I describe your films to my friends as like psychological horrors or like head horrors, because it's like it's not necessarily like someone's out here murdering people, but it just is, it messes with your head in kind of a scary way. And like I think that's the genre that he tries to follow, if there is one, but I mean that's debatable.
I gotcha. I
don't think I've ever seen another Darren Aronofsky movie, actually.
I mean,
Not
I've
even
only
Requiem
seen
for a
Black
Dream.
Swan and I think the beginning of Pi, but I started to watch it too late at night, so I don't have much to go off of. But I have 2 films, and both I would call psychological horrors. So there's that.
Yeah, that's definitely where he likes to play. I think I think my only thing would be like, that's cool if you want to do that. To me, I just found it weird. So I'm going to compare it to, let's say, Shutter Island. I just recently watched Shutter Island for the first time.
Nice.
Which is also, I would say, like a psychological horror.
100%.
Or at least
For sure.
the same
Yeah.
type of... I feel like the same type of movie that like Darren wants to make.
Wants to, yeah.
Yeah. But the difference for me is that the horror elements that are in Mother, I feel like are Friday the 13th horror elements. Like, they don't strike me as psychological elements, like the closing the thing and someone's there, turning on the light and someone's outside, like
That's
that
very
kind
like
of shit.
cliche, yeah.
Yes, it strikes me as like slasher, low budget,
Yeah.
whatever. Whereas I think if you look at something like Shutter Island, which is made by a very good, competent director, like
No
the
way.
psychological horror is done in like more clever ways than just like the guidebook of how to make a horror movie 101 basic bullshit. And I like, personally, I feel like psychological horror really, like, that's what sets it apart a lot of the time, right? Is that you are getting away from those kind of like typical
From
horror
the jump
movie.
scares, yeah.
Yeah, like that kind of shit. And I know it's like a small thing that only happens like a little bit in the movie, but every time it happened,
No, but it's dumb. You're
I
right.
got angry. I was like, what are you doing? This is so stupid. So, does anyone...
It's
That's a good
desperate.
Yeah,
segue.
it's desperation.
Yeah, do you want to go to your time code funny moments?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't
how
have
you
everything
held up
time
the
coded.
notebook? Amazing.
Okay, let's go through some. Okay, so first thing here, the text font is pretentious and dumb. That was my first note.
That's like the very beginning.
Very
Oh,
first
you
thing
mean
you
like
see.
for the title?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
Oh,
What?
The same font is used for the prayer that he handed out to the press. Exact same font. I could barely read it.
Can we also say why the exclamation point?
Oh my god. The fact that it's lowercase an exclamation point,
I know.
that alone, I'm like,
That is just-
this guy thinks he's so fucking deep.
Yes, that's pure pretentious. Is
yeah.
pretentiousness a word?
I don't know.
Because
I was
that's
gonna,
what
I
it
was
is,
gonna
if
call
it
it
is.
pretension, but I also don't think that's a word.
It might be
I think
But
it's
pretentious.
same
pretentiousness,
idea,
but I don't know.
so dumb. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, continue.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
So I already made the point. I'm gonna make it again. Was seeing J-Law's nips worthwhile? Important? Because this is gonna be a recurring thing I come back to. At 11 minutes 10 seconds, weird cut to somebody laughing. This movie is shot boring. Because at one point they cut to someone who goes ha ha ha, and it reminded me of like the 1968 Planet of the Apes when they cut to Charlton Heston and he's just like cracking up for no fucking reason. Okay. Then at 11 minutes 42 seconds, after Adam comes in and starts coughing, I made a note here. Dude has a General Grievous cough? ? General Grievous, everyone's favorite Star Wars character.
Yeah, of course.
At 13 minutes, scary basement scene, 2 question marks. Oh wait, it's just boring. Boring does not equal tense. Okay, let's go. Page
But
2
it's a
here.
basement. All basements are scary.
No,
Marco, aren't you in your basement right now?
I am
actually?
in my basement. I can tell you.
Are
I'm
you
not,
scared?
I'm not scared. I'm scared about the fact that I watched this movie. I'm frightened that I put my
That
mind
counts.
through
That counts for something.
At 18 minutes 45 seconds, Darren said, "Hey J-Law, no bras in this movie," because once again, you can see her boobs. Okay. At 19 minutes 30 seconds, quote unquote super deep movie has a jump scare. I actually pointed out that jump scare. At 20 minutes, Adam and Eve, do you get it? That was another thing I wrote. Oh, this is one of my favorites. At 28 minutes, is that where he works? Eve says, "Is that where he works?" And then she points up, and the camera pans up, and there's just light coming out of the room. And I was like,
Heaven.
I get it. It's heaven. I get it, Darren. Okay, so at 33 minutes, I have written a toilet monster that made me laugh out loud. That's when there's the little thing in the toilet.
Yeah, we couldn't decide what it was.
Then I have just a bunch of notes about the actual movie, because at this point I was still making notes. At 37 minutes, was that a sex scene? Did Tommy Wiseau shoot this movie? Because it isn't possible.
It was also on the stairs, again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just like in the room.
This is one of my favorites. At 40 minutes, a new guy walks in, and J-Law says, "What are you doing here?" And then I believe it's Eve walks up and says, "What are any of us doing here?" And that's one of my favorite lines, because it's meant to excuse the entire plot. It's meant to excuse how this guy would know to be there. And I was like, no, that's a very good question. You should answer why you're here right now. Because this is still a movie that takes place in, like, fucking existence. Like, isn't normal. Okay. Let's see. I don't have a time code for this, but General Hux kills his brother. Obviously, General Hux from Star Wars. And I didn't know if Cain killed Abel or if Abel killed Cain, so I just called him General Hux.
I don't think anyone will be mad.
General Hux, the famous Bible character.
At 47 minutes, I have the house's heart shrunk 3 sizes that day, because we see the heart, like, shrivel up a little bit.
Another good Christmas reference. Love the Grinch.
Yeah. Oh, at 59 minutes, Schitt's Creek girl shows up. I think I've been asleep for the last 10 minutes, because I just didn't take any notes for a very long time.
Who's Schitt's Creek girl?
Wait, who's that?
It's the girl that's, like, sitting on the ledge and talking to that guy.
Oh,
You
where
know?
she's like, get off, it's unbraced.
Yeah. She's in Schitt's Creek, and Schitt's Creek, by the way, for anyone listening, very funny show, very funny Canadian show.
I've heard, yeah.
I would highly recommend it. It's great. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's get through some of this. Oh, this is one of my favorite notes. I don't have a timestamp, but the note is J-Law saying, "You can't even fuck me," and then plus a rape scene equals feminism to Darren Aronofsky. So there we go. Great. Let's see. Okay, at 1 hour, 25 minutes, I've given up on taking notes because it's the same thing over and over. Then I have random Kristen Wiig appears. Then at 1 hour, 32 minutes, this movie has gone off the rails and I don't care about any of it. And then I literally just have written in the middle of the page, "Is floorboard house's vagina?" That's literally all I have written.
That is my favorite thing that you texted us.
And then my final note on this movie, Mother Nature burns the house down because global warming. There we go.
But then it restarts like nothing happened.
Yeah.
So, but for a movie that's supposed to be like, we hate global warming, like be nice to the earth, why do you have it end in like global warming, quote unquote, and then have it restart like very easily with no visible damage? That seems kind of counterintuitive.
I guess it was like global warming will kill the population, and that's what happened.
But then God will be fine, so like don't worry about it. Like also in my notes, I found I wrote, "Are we supposed to hate God?" So I think I changed my opinion on everything I said, and he does hate religion. Because I was just reading it, and I was like, oh,
yes.
Okay, God sucks.
So I have 2 thoughts on that ending. I have the ending that I think would be more interesting, and then I have the ending that I think he's implying. Okay? Yes. Here's the more interesting ending. The more interesting ending is the Lorax ending. Okay? The Lorax classic Dr. Seuss book, and it ends with everything's gone to shit, and the Onceler is talking to the kid, and he says, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better, it's not. Right? It's a great ending, but it's like a hopeful ending, because like everything's gone to shit, but it's like we can still start over, which could be an interpretation for the ending of this. Except, Carol, I think Darren does hate religion because God literally says, well, I'm never going to be satisfied, so we're just going to keep doing this until the end of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Also, I like that, I mean, given Darren's interpretation of it, it's like no woman specifically will ever satisfy me, so let's just keep going. Like, fuck, like women are just like whatever, I have a million I can create.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Darren Aronofsky hates everything and everyone except the environment, except he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about.
He likes the environment, but he hates women, but he made Mother Earth very obviously a woman. So that's interesting. I still don't know what he likes and hates. But yeah, go planet, fuck women, fuck God, I think is the takeaway from the film.
He made Mother Earth a woman so that way he could get J-Law topless like 5 different times in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, and then they dated, so who knows how many times she was topless. But, like, good for him, I guess.
I guess. Alright, does anyone have any closing thoughts?
Well, I did want to just talk briefly about, like, okay, film characters. Yeah, this movie doesn't have any because all of its characters, again, in quotes, are just ideas, like metaphors taken from the source material, right?
Yep.
I feel like I feel like this would be a great note to end on, is just talking about what makes a strong character. And Marco, I know you enjoy writing a lot. So did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, So what I'm about to say, I learned from watching many, like Sorkin podcasts and interviews and stuff. But what he's referencing is a very old idea, and if you listen to pretty much any writer, they might have their own way of saying it, but it always boils down to the same thing. So I'm about to go way back here. In Aristotle wrote this book. I'm not even joking.
No,
Aristotle
go ahead.
wrote this book called The Poetics. And in the Poetics, he basically outlines what a drama is. Okay? And, like, pretty much everything that's in there are, like, the fundamental rules of storytelling. And, like, if you break one of those, like, there's something missing. And Sorkin kind of summarizes it as, and I've actually read it because I'm such a fanboy, but he summarizes it as the idea that a film character has, like, there's, like, 3 basic properties that makes up a film character, okay? The first is the, like, intention. So a character has to want something, or, like, they have to need something. Okay? There's the obstacle. The obstacle is the thing that the plot is putting in their way. And then they have their tactics. So, like, tactics are what we would all refer to as character. Tactics are how your protagonist tries to overcome the plot's obstacle to get what they want and or need. And, like, basically that is the structure of any dramatic story. That is the structure of what makes a character. A really, really good character has a really, really strong intention and an obstacle that's, like, really formidable. So, for example, if you are dealing with a character who wants to get a good grade on the test and has, like, nothing else standing in their way other than they have to study, that's not really compelling because it's just like, well, just fucking study.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, if you start putting other shit in that character's way, it makes the obstacle more formidable. And, like, what we talk about as a character is how they overcome that. A lot of times you'll find characters that are very weak characters but have a lot of character traits, like a lot of really specific things about them, and that's not the same thing. Like, what really defines a character is their attempts to get what they want by overcoming what's in their way. Character traits are their favorite color, the type of clothes that they wear, the type of words that they use.
Job.
Like, it's the really kind of, yeah, it's the superficial stuff that, like, can become important if you make it important, but ultimately doesn't really matter. And I think if you look at Mother, to bring it all back around, where this movie kind of, like, fails and why we're talking about it not having a character is, and not having a plot, no one in this movie wants and or needs anything, and there's, like, nothing ever standing in, it's just a sequence of events that we watch, and, like, that's it. And that does not make a character, which is why it's not compelling to watch in the first place. And, like, going back to, like, my initial pitch for, like, how to make this better, part of the reason why that would kind of work is because you have a literal drama of, like, a husband and wife arguing about like whether or not to have a kid or like the ramifications of like having a kid, those are like intentions and obstacles, right? Like those are like actual like things that make them characters, and then within those characters you can embed this idea of like the religious undertone or whatever. So like at its core, like if you ever hear me complaining about character or whatever, like in specific, that's kind of what I'm talking about, is they gotta want something, they have to like not just be able to easily get it, and they have to try and overcome it. And this movie doesn't have literally any of that. This movie is nothing. What does J-Lo want?
Yeah, their motivation is so unclear. Like, I guess, like, God wanted to write because, like, that's his thing. But even then, like, for so long, he just, like, wasn't.
It's just things happening to them.
Yeah. Like, there wasn't a logical, like, I mean, I know the question wasn't posed to me because I know nothing about
No, I posed it to both of you.
Make a good character.
Yeah, go for it.
But, like, in general, to, like, have a compelling character in a film, like, you want to just, like, believe that they're a human that exists. I mean, I guess in this world, sometimes other worlds, but, like, they need to have motivation. Like, you want to believe that they've, like, had a past, whether that's made explicit or not, but just, like, you just want to be able to relate to them. And I guess, like, J-Law didn't have a past, considering she was just made from the stone and was one of many reiterations. But, like, it didn't, there was no tie to either of the characters. You didn't know what they were doing or why. Like, and those questions were never really entirely answered. It just all seemed, like, meaningless, and especially when it all dissolved into chaos. It was extra, like, there's no one I'm, like, rooting for. Like, I guess kind of Mother Earth, but even so, like, because we don't know much about her other than she stays in this house forever, like, you don't really have a good reason to. It just, it seemed very shallow, despite, I'm sure, him wanting it to be really deep.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that we're talking about character, like, just the term character versus character traits, because the way I think of it is, like, for me, theoretically, and I'm just like, I am just a film student. I'm going to acknowledge that right away. This is just from what I've learned so far. But for me, the perfect character in a story is, if you think about a graph of the progression of the story and the likability of the character. Like, for me, a perfect character starts at the 0-0 point and steadily rises, for a hero anyway, steadily rises till the end of the movie. But when you have these shallow character traits, it helps, but it's kind of cheating, because you're not starting at the 0-0 point. You're starting a little bit above 0 on the likability scale, and then you continue to rise. So you kind of have that, like, it's like your character has training wheels, sort of. That's a stupid analogy, but
no,
yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think it's also part of the reason why it's so hard, and we're seeing this a lot in the modern era, to, like, continue franchises, because the people that are continuing the franchises are people that were fans of the franchise growing up, and so they're so focused on the traits and on, you know, I don't want to get too specific. One day, Dan, you know what I'm talking about. You know which franchise I'm talking about here. But
are you sure you don't want to get specific?
Like 3 movies, and not one of them understood Luke Skywalker as a character. Not one.
Still don't know what you're
and
talking
they all
about,
were just like, they were all superficial character trait things. It's a problem. And I would even say for this movie, it's like, it doesn't even make that attempt to have the character traits. Like, in this movie, it's so banking on the idea of your understanding of the religious stories and your understanding of environmentalism, that even the thinly veiled plot elements aren't plot, like, they're immediately resolved. Like, Jaylon never talks about wanting to be intimate. She talks about wanting to be intimate, and within a minute she has a child, right? Or
but even she doesn't talk about it. Like, Michelle Pfeiffer asks if you have been, and then she just only ever says, you can't even fuck me, and then they fuck. Like, that's it.
Yeah. So, like, if you go back to the idea of, like, motivation, of, like, intention and obstacle, it's like there's never an obstacle.
Nope.
Because you're so relying on these built-in stories that people understand that you don't have to make an obstacle, but because this is, like, its own movie, you do, for it to work as a movie. So when, like, Cain and Abel show up, and frickin' General Hux, whichever one he's supposed to be, kills the other one.
I think he's supposed to be Cain.
It's like, Yeah, it's like, it's this thinly, like, you left him more money, so now I'm going to kill him. And it's like, what? It's like, if you didn't know that was Cain and Abel, I would, how do you even watch that scene and, like, have it function as a movie scene? It doesn't. It makes no sense.
Very true.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, but he kills him with the doorknob. So early in the movie, God, by locking them out of Eden, he physically breaks the doorknob out of the door to his office, which is Eden, and then, like, boards it up later. But the weapon, I'm pretty sure that Cain uses to kill his brother is the doorknob, which I don't understand. Like, I was thinking about that last night. Does that mean something?
No.
Okay. That's the end of that story.
Technically, like, God is all-knowing, so Cain killing Abel or vice versa, whatever happened, was technically part of God's plan. So maybe him placing the doorknob within a reachable distance was to illustrate that everything is a part of God's plan, because God just happened to place the doorknob within killing distance, you know.
For audio
I don't
listeners,
know. That's just like
Marco is
I
visibly
haven't
angry.
thought of it till now. Yeah, he's
See, but here's the
shaking
thing.
his hands in the video.
And this is what, like, grinds my gears, and it goes back to what Dan was talking about with, like, I was saying about the whole New Testament thing of, like, shouldn't he be writing it after? It's like, they want to have God be a character in the narrative, but because the narrative is the Bible, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, he either has to be outside of the story and, like, clearly outside of the story, or not. And the movie doesn't take a position one way or the other, where it's like, sometimes he's in the story, but sometimes he's, like, outside of the story. Like, maybe when he brings the baby out to get killed, maybe that is the thing of, like, knowing Jesus would die. Maybe he's supposed to be outside of the story. But is he? I don't know. The movie doesn't say. You know why? Because no one fucking knows and no one thought about it. They didn't think. They just said, hey, Javier Bardem, just come to set and, I don't know. We're just going to shoot you. You can just point for them to get out of the room or something. And no, here's what happened. They were like, how is General Hux going to kill his brother? What's lying around the house? And then they were like, we should go and, like, reshoot the scene with God.
So he knocks the
doorknob. And it'll be like the
off.
Chekhov's... Yeah, it'll be like the Chekhov's gun thing. Chekhov's gun is this, like, writer's principle that says, like, if you show a gun in the first act, it has to be used in the third act. And if you use a gun in the third act, it has to be shown in the first act. So I promise you, they were like, how is he going to kill his brother? And they were like,
let's set it up.
I don't know. God breaks the handle.
But you know who doesn't know more than any of us? Darren Aronofsky.
No, he knows nothing.
He knows it is a religious allegory and kind of about Mother Earth, and that is it, the end.
That's it. Guys, as we approach the 2-hour mark almost of
Our longest
would
episode
love
yet.
to talk about Mother.
This is, I think, my favorite
Me too,
episode we've
definitely.
done so far. I can't wait to promote this one because it's longer, but people, if anyone listening to this, like, you will really enjoy this.
Well, they've already listened to it, so...
What I would say...
I guess we've gotten to this point.
You should, like, just clip this out, Carol, and put it right at the start of the episode. Just if you're going to listen to this...
I like
you're going to
it.
love it.
Storytelling.
It's cyclical. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Are you the writer? The great poet? We didn't talk about that line.
Oh my god. Okay. I'm going to end this. But I need to say one more thing. Writers who write about writers make me want to jump off a bridge. Like, I get it. Listen, both people in The Office's writing room and also in the West Wing writing room talked about this idea that when you're trying to do a show every week, 22 episodes a year, at some point you just run out of ideas, and so you go to something really to what you know. That's why there's a lot of Office episodes about Michael trying to do some type of film production thing, because they all went through that. It's a very easy plot to put together. In the West Wing, there are speechwriters. If Aaron didn't know what he wanted the episode to be about, guess what the episode was about? One of the writers having writer's block. It's like the oldest trick, and if you're doing 22 episodes a year for however many fucking years, cool. You gotta do that sometimes. I get it. If you have millions and millions of dollars to make a movie with, like, every famous person ever, and everyone is backing you, and you can't think of it like God, like, Darren thinks he's God. You know what I mean?
Surprised he didn't cast
God's the writer,
himself,
and, like,
honestly.
I'm the writer.
He fought it. It's not about him. It's not about writers. It's not about famous people. It's only God. Okay, Marco?
Yeah, it's only, yeah. it's so like, because God didn't even write the goddamn like, it doesn't even make sense, because like the apostles wrote the Testament. It doesn't even have him be another type of artist.
But
you want to talk about him being like
create Kristen Wiig? We can't.
I know, but like, if you want to have him be like in the like, if you want to talk about creation, why not have him be a visual artist? Like, isn't that a better representation of that? No, he has to be a writer, because the Testaments. Oh, but God didn't write the Testaments. Yeah, but I'm a writer and I'm God, so fuck you. That's what the like.
Yeah, or he should have like had an active part in rebuilding the home.
Yes. There were so many better ways to show him being. Why did?
Anyway, I feel like that got out of hand, but it was worth it.
It's one of those things. I didn't write it down. I forgot to bring it up. But it really stuck with me in my core, where I was like, you piece of shit. Okay.
On that
Thank
note.
you, everyone, for listening to this episode. This is our longest episode. I also think this is probably our best episode. This is a very good episode.
I'm telling you, we improve every time.
Yeah, we get better every time.
Speaking of which, though, we would love any feedback whatsoever.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, guys, like, comment, text. I mean, I'm sure most of you know us personally.
Yeah.
Shoot us a text.
But if you don't, feel
What
free
can
to
we do better?
leave a comment for sure.
And listen, like, if you don't, we're just gonna keep doing this. So
because we're having fun. No
we
matter
are.
who listens, we just love to talk to each other. Because unless you don't know us, we don't all live in the same city, and also we're in the middle of a pandemic, so we don't like hang out regularly. So it's just nice to talk to friends about things that we like, or in this case don't like, every so often. So
Yeah, and like these,
it's gonna keep happening whether you listen or not, but we do appreciate you
the truth
listening
is,
if you do.
These like conversations that we have were happening for years anyway. We just decided to start recording. So that's all this really is, but we're having fun with it.
Yeah. Should we tease our next episode?
I think it's tradition at this point.
We're decided. Yeah.
Guys, this was so much fun. We had such a fun time today, but also we've been doing a lot of really heavy-handed stuff. Lord of the Rings, super heavy-handed. Fleabag, super heavy-handed. This, just a black hole. Like, it just sucks everything out of you. Next week, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite, I think, probably in like my top 3 favorite comedies. I don't know about you guys as well.
It's up there.
The classic School of Rock, starring Jack Black and a bunch of children.
Jack Black, yes.
It is such a funny movie. So please, if you want to rewatch it, rewatch it.
I'm looking forward to rewatching.
It's gonna be another. Yeah, me too. It's gonna be a great episode.
Laugh,
this is.
Yeah.
I think this is our first one that we've all seen that we've done.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so we won't have any fresh takes, but we will probably do a lot of laughing and gushing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll sing, who knows.
Well, if it counts for anything, I haven't seen it in like 10 years. So I'll be seeing it for the first time in like
And I watch it every year. Almost.
Yeah.
Just
Cool.
like by coincidence, not on purpose. It just happens.
Okay, guys. Thanks for listening. If you want to contact us, YouTube comments and/or text us, and/or we also have social media, but you probably know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that it?
I think so.
I think so. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
listening.
Thank you for
to us
listening.
yell for 2 whole hours. Much appreciated.
I'm just gonna say one more thing, and then we can cut the episode after I say it. Okay?
Marco, it's always you.
Ready?
Huh? Go ahead.
It has to be. Okay. Stardate negative 302344.867. We forgot to do that. Okay.
Oh my god. How dare us. Okay, the end. Thanks so much.
The end.
Thank you.
Guys. Hey guys, we just wanted to put something here at the end of the episode to acknowledge the passing of Chadwick Boseman. He passed shortly after we recorded the episode, and we just didn't feel right putting out the episode without saying anything, because obviously this is a super big loss. I mean, such a talented actor, and obviously such an important actor, playing, the first major black superhero we've ever had. So we all just wanted to say a quick little something and just acknowledge it at the end of the episode here.
So I mean, I still can't believe it. It was horrible news. And it just like, it got me thinking like, wow, he really achieved a lot in his life. Like you just mentioned, to, you know, really pave the way, or like help pave the way for, like, for example, superheroes who aren't like a white man, you know? And I think that was just like it really deepened the cut for me. It really hit hard. Absolutely, again, couldn't believe it when I read the news, but I'm very sorry for all of his family.
Yeah, and especially in a time that is marked by so much already Black Death. I mean, there already is proportionally more, but I guess more televised Black Death, having this extra important, I mean, just I guess more famous and mainstream person die so suddenly, especially since no one knew about his diagnosis, really hit hard. And just to see like such an important person and like role model for millions of Black children growing up, like I just keep seeing like photos of like little Black kids, and they're like crying over their Black Panther action figures. So it is like an extreme loss, and yeah, it really hit hard. But rest in peace.
Yep,
absolutely.
This is a terrible year, and also just like so young, like 43.
Yeah.
Way too young.
Yeah, very young.
Ridiculous. Yeah, so rest in peace to Chadwick. Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and, you know, obviously this sucks that he passed, but glad that we can continue to enjoy his work as stuff goes on. And, yeah, like we said at the end of the actual episode, we will be back, and, you know, hopefully better times ahead.